Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on MP Peak Pass playing as the High Elves against the forces of the Skaven. So right off the bat you can see we are doing some dirty tricks here as the filthy pointy ears, vanguarding a whole bunch of Shadow Warriors, and that is really the gist of this game. It's a vanguard build, it's a kiting build. If you are not a fan of these builds, avert your eyes now because that is what this whole game will be. But going right in, you can see the troop count's very uneven. Obviously wanted to make a Vanguard build work. I did figure it could work pretty well against Skaven. Skaven struggle against these sorts of builds. Certainly they have some tools to shut them down. They can bring their own skirmishers, with, especially with slings, to kind of harass you back. They can try to run you down with Rat Ogres, but Rat Ogres are really squishy. Doom Wheels are really the only unit they have that can safely run down units like Shadow Warriors or Deepwood Scouts. Obviously, they will not do well against Way Watchers, who just annihilate them with AP fire, but everything else they can kind of run down. But otherwise, it's a really rough situation for Skaven. And I figured that if my opponent went chaff heavy, which can be a problem, I would be able to sort of gun them down, with the one threat being a bunch of Stormmen, but for that we do have a few tools. So Vanguard, a whole bunch of Shadow Warriors, 6 units of them, divided into two groups of 3, spread out. And I kind of anticipated my opponent to deploy here, but honestly, this was not a bad move. This way my opponent could kind of move his artillery up on the hill, and then get flanking shots down into my forces, which would most likely be advancing over there. So definitely a solid deployment there from my opponent, and kind of off-putting me right off the bat. For my Lord, I decided to bring Techless because I think he's probably the best way to go here. You get he's kind of an all-in-one Lord. You get Regrowth, Flock of Doom, Enfeebling Foe, Flaming Sword of Ruin, Net of a Mintock, which is of course great to defend your fleeing infantry, Bound Fiery Convocation, of course good self-survivability with Potion of Troy. I backed him up with 2 Nobles, one of whom does have the buff to missile resistance with Sacred Incense. Not a skill I usually bring, but I figured that because we'll be moving in a sort of goon squad, and it's a pretty cheap upgrade, might as well bring it and get that extra missile resist, which puts everyone up here up to, I think, 27%? Yeah, 27%. And of course, the 2 AP Nobles are largely there to hunt down enemy chariots, to hunt down Doom Wheels, units like that. Especially hit them with a net, and then follow up with the Nobles, and you got to kill. On one flank, Fireborn, of course, ready to shut down enemy large, ready to shut down regenerating monstrosities, ready to also defend the archers against enemy pressure. On the other flank, same thing, except it's just a unit of Dragon Princes. So nothing too fancy, but definitely something that can punish Skaven infantry pretty heavily. And if my opponent had gone with a bunch of Stormmen, except for Halberds, but Halberds we could kind of wither down with just mass fire, but if he gone with a bunch of normal Stormmen, I figured I could cycle charge them down with the Dragon Princes if push came to shove. So my opponent's build a little bit odd. Definitely a pretty solid deployment here, I think. He's got a bunch of Clan Rats, Vanguard deploy, or not Vanguard deployed, but deployed in the front. Some Spears, some normal Clan Rats, some shielded, some not. Probably just based on money, but he does have them spaced out in the front to zone away my main sort of firing line, and they are covering for a very significant shooting force. 3 units of Night Runners with slings, as well as Gutter Runner slingers with poison. Very solid, in my opinion, a very solid or competitive sort of choice. Gutter Runners with slingers, of course, providing some poison and a little bit extra damage, while the Night Runners, and of course if you try to charge in, these guys do have the nets, so they can slow your cavalry down, while the 3 Night Runners with slings are going to be providing sort of the main bulk of firepower while being cheaper than the Gutter Runners. My opponent does have 2 Poison Ring Globadiers, a bit of an odd choice, and this is probably one of the main odd choices here. These guys I don't think are particularly competitive against the High Elves. They're anti-large, they are armor piercing, but kind of inaccurate. Very short range, very susceptible to shooting, and tend to kind of get run over by cavalry. So definitely a bit of a risky unit, but we'll see how they work out here. They do have 100 armor, so it's not going to be pushover for the Shadow Walkers. A Warlock Engineer with Warp Lightning, Doom Rocket, surprisingly, Death Frenzy, and Howling Warp Gale, as well as Warpstone Armor. So a pretty solid selection of spells. For his Lord, he does have a Warlord mounted on Bone Ripper. I've been seeing more and more of these in Quick Match lately, and I don't know why. I don't think they're a very good pick. But he does have some pretty cool debuffs. He's got a self-buff with Armor, Permanent Valor, of course, Deadly Onslaught, so all sorts of things. Some Rat Ogres, a Helpit Abomination, some Skaven Slaves for additional fodder, and then a Warp Lightning Cannon, who is immediately going to start teeing off on my Dragon Princes, trying to farm some kills. Fortunately, though, all those shots do miss, because these guys, I think, are a little bit sort of behind a divot. Regardless, we are pulling back, trying to sort of evade my opponent's attentions here with our Shadow Warriors, but unfortunately, I'm not even sure why these guys reformed ranks here. I think it must have been something I was doing with my positioning. But you can see this is not where you want your archers to be, and you can see one of them there pays the price for being stupid. So you honestly, look at you getting pasted. You deserved it. you don't know how to position. But regardless, we do net the Helping Abomination down with the net of a Mintok, and then charge in with our Noble Squad. And you can see we're focusing it down hard. It's only got 50 armor, and actually if we look at the Helping Abomination, I don't believe it has the best missile resist either. It's only got 15% missile resist. So against this much arrow fire, it's not going to do well, and of course we are standing in defense mode, so the Shadow Warriors can continue firing while they are being meleeed. And the Helpit here is just going down like a 9-pin. Now granted, it will have Too Horrible to Die, but once it's routed, of course, it doesn't matter too much. And we actually do drop it to the point that Skaven Slave Spears come out. It actually doesn't get its proc, so big value there. Dragon Princess goes sweeping in, right of the Warhammer there, as the Shadow Warriors unleash a crossfire on the Rat Ogres trying to push through. So definitely things already looking pretty good. Now unfortunately, a lot of shooting from my opponent, damaging the Fireborn pretty badly, but you know, we're able to kind of mop the floor with my opponent's infantry contingent. Definitely a very solid start for the High Elves. We are able to kind of wipe out these Rat Ogres. We're able to push out, we'll kill the Hellpit Abomination, and by and large we've managed to secure our Shadow Warriors. We're going to be able to just keep fleeing. They're slower than Clanrats when the Clanrats get their trait procced, or their trait that slows them down when it gets deprocced, I guess. I think it's Scurry Away. They get plus 12% speed. So with that, these guys are going to run even faster. They're going to be very hard to catch, and you can see with this, well, they're going to have an easy time catching me. So we are trying to pull away with the Shadow Warriors, continue firing away. Big mistake, another big mistake here on my part, though. Seeing or really desperately wanting to shut down the Warp Lightning Cannon, I did decide to push in the Dragon Princes, losing half the models on the charge here. They do get in on the crew, but unfortunately, you can see the Bone Rippers here, or the Bone Breaker. It's going to start whomping on these Dragon Princes, and although we are trying desperately to take this crew offline, and we do kill a few of them, it's just not going to be enough, and the Dragon Princes here are going to actually get routed off. So big sort of loss here, losing about half a unit of Dragon Princes. And honestly, had I kind of ignored the Warp Lightning Cannon, I might have just been able to preserve them and evade my opponent's Arc of Fire. Everywhere else on the map in the meantime, Teclis and company wiping out these Clanrats. The Shadow Warriors still have a healthy amount of ammo left, 8, 9. Some I think are even at half with 10 there. So these definitely a decent chunk of ammo left. Of course, using the Fireborn, trying to wipe out the Skaven for good in as cheap of a manner as humanly possible. So we are using our cavalry for mop-up operations, but things definitely looking to stabilize a little bit. My opponent will be able to reman his Warp Lightning Cannon. The Routing Dragon Princes will be able to escape, but of course they are now very badly mauled. And my opponent is sort of regrouping here. He wasn't sort of sometimes you have opponents who will just keep pressuring you and they just keep going at you, but my opponent here definitely doing the right thing or the clever thing and pulling back, retreating, and regrouping his forces. Obviously these Clanrats are basically as good as lost. Some of these over here, the Clanrat spears with shields, are getting wiped out by the Fireborn. And this is very important. When you have a lull in fighting like this, you want to regroup what troops you can, while at the same time eradicating whatever enemy troops are on your side of the line, because you don't want them coming back later and being a thorn in your side, which is why it's very important to wipe out these Clanrat spears. You can see them; they are not having a good time against these fiery lances that are just spearing them and skewering those filthy vermin. Over here I do try to push in with Teclis and company, but unfortunately my opponent does have a whole bunch of Poison Globadiers. He's got the Warp Lightning Cannon, and immediately we're taking pounding, so I'm going to sort of cycle around and start retreating. Well, the big problem is my opponent actually still has a lot of ammo left. He hasn't really used up many shots on his Night Runner Slingers at all, so they're still very healthy. And so we do simply pull away with Teclis. I pop Potion of Chiroy, and then I do start pushing forward with the Shadow Warriors. Now this was another bit of a mistake. I come charging in like a maniac with these Dragon Princes over here, desperately trying to shut down the Warp Lightning Cannon, which is honestly teeing off there against Teclis. But the thing is, Teclis, he'll get Potion of Troy very soon. It's got like is it 45 or 90 second cooldown? It's got like almost no cooldown, 60 seconds. So I'll be able to get my HP back, and my opponent, while doing the smart thing here by falling back, is also going to expose his artillery to archer fire. It's only got 1800 HP. If I can get all 6 Shadow Warriors firing in on it, I could easily wipe the crew with just shooting and not risk my Dragon Princes, who are still at almost health models. Big mistake though. Bit of tomfoolery here. We do charge in, which is of course going to pull the crews off, but my opponent of course immediately pivots his Poison Wind Globadiers, who are going to do an absolute number on my poor Dragon Princes. Granted, they do wipe out some of their own artillery pieces there, who I do think count as large models perhaps, and of course they will rout the crew, but a sacrifice of an entire unit of Dragon Princes for that was really not worth it. You can see these guys just completely falling apart. My opponent's volleys of Poison Wind Globes, they're just coming in. You can see these proud noble horses just getting massacred, and really just a total disaster, which is kind of shifting the balance of power a little back towards the center. My opponent does in the meantime push his infantry forward once again, trying to pressure me, trying to apply some pressure there. Uh, so we are going to be once again forced to retreat. I honestly should probably turn my guys onto free fire, because if push comes to shove, the Shadow Warriors can fight in melee against Night Runners. And we do still have some cavalry. My opponent here getting a lovely warplaning, and it actually really does a number on my Dragon Princess. I was actually shocked by that. But we do wipe out these clan rats almost to man. We're going to be able to rout them off, and then pull away and start going over there to try to help our troops. We are getting constantly pounded by the Night Runner fire, but we do get a nice little fiery convocation, roasting them a little bit. And immediately get a try to get a regrowth there on our Dragon Princess. Unfortunately, that magic damage from the Poison Globadier is doing an absolute number on him once again. So we're going to push in and try to disrupt them with our cavalry, with our heroes, with all that sort of stuff. But once again, these guys do have 100 armor, so while we are preventing them from shooting, they are going to be able to sort of hold their own. They won't just roll over and die immediately. That means we're going to keep getting shot at. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, he tries to sig his Bonebreaker onto Teclis, hits him with Death Frenzy, hitting him with Deadly Onslaught. But Teclis, we're just running for dear life here, trying to get out of range. One of the problems with Net of Mintok is that it does have a minimum range, and it's actually not, I think, listed. You can see, if you look at the spell, it's not, nowhere is it listed that it has a minimum range. But there is a minimum range, and so when my opponent was within about, I don't know, 10, 20 meters of me, I wasn't able to get the net on the Warlord. I finally am able to do that, and now the Rain of Death is coming in. This Warlord is going to pay. We do hit him with the Net of Mintok, immediately pull the Fireborn away, and the Fireborn is just going to pound him to death. He's only got 55 melee defense. The Fireborn, of course, very good against these sorts of troops, and they're going to melt him with some help from the archers. He does try to pop Verminous Valor, which gives him some speed, but we're onto him. He's not going nowhere, and we're going to get him good. In the meantime, in the pits, the Poison Globadiers, one unit shattered, one unit routed, but we are getting slowed down by the Night Runner Slingers, though fortunately things are definitely starting to even out in my favor. Here in the pits, the Shadow Warriors still holding their own against the forces of the Clan Rats. You can see the stat-wise, if we actually compare the Clan Rats, that you're looking at 24. Of course, these guys are without their buff, but also even normal Shadow Warriors are 36, 22, 32 against 24, 18, 26. So Shadow Warriors will definitely trash these guys in close quarters. And with Martial Prowess, it's even more one-sided. So we're really able to get some good value here. And now Teclis coming in, of course, being the best shock cav in the game. Teclis just dives in and is going to wreck face. Now, he is amongst a bunch of spears, but, you know, he's not terrible. He's able to rout these guys off. That's the main thing, of course. It's just get that fear leadership debuff. We had managed to snipe their lord, who's actually, that's not their lord. Their lord's over here. So we had managed to snipe him, which means my opponent is now without leadership, which for Skaven is a disaster. We still have a good chunk of ammo left, and although our Fire Warriors here getting, or Fire Warriors, yes, we are the Tau guys, our Fire Warriors, but despite our Fireborn here, kind of getting stuck out, having to fight this Warlock Engineer. Things are definitely looking up. We still have a good chunk of ammo, like we discussed before. We can obviously, at that point, wipe out these Night Runner Slingers. We still have a good chunk of cavalry left. We are able to rout off the Warlock Engineer, and there's still Teclis, the two Nobles. Nobles, of course, not ideal for this sort of mass clearance, but you know, with Teclis, with the archers coming in, we'll be able to definitely do the deed. Over here, you know, Skaven Slave Spear just sitting around in the periphery, takes a few volleys from the Shadow Warriors, but at this point, it's really just endgame as we do sort of mop up, wipe out these enemy troops, get a nice little fiery convocation there. My opponent tries to dodge, but his army does shatter. So I do think this is actually a decent building in Skaven. I just don't think I think I went a little overboard and perhaps a little over the top with the way I built it here. I think if you're looking for a more competitive variant of this composition, I would consider dropping a unit of Shadow Warriors. Perhaps cutting some corners on Teclis, trying to get either a unit of Silver Helms on the field or an extra unit of Dragon Princes on the field if you can afford it. Get some extra cav on there. Otherwise, you could drop the Fireborn down to normal Dragon Princes, drop a single unit of Shadow Warriors. That's probably enough to get 3 normal Dragon Princes. You don't necessarily need the anti-large with the Fireborn. It's just nice. It's a very nifty sort of buff. And of course, their stats are ludicrous. They sit, I think, in the 50s for both melee defense and melee attack when they're when their Martial Mastery is procced. So they're a very solid unit. But I definitely think this is competitive against Skaven. Skaven struggled to shut it down. And my opponent here, sure, he could have gone heavier on shields. But Stormvermin, not that common of a pick against High Elves. Plague Monks, of course, would get absolutely decimated. Mass Rat Ogres, decimated, probably. There's not much this Skaven can really do against you. They can bring artillery, which can be decent. But otherwise, there isn't too much they can do, I don't think, against this sort of mass kiting build. Maybe once we get Warplock Jezzails, that'll change. But until then, I think it's definitely pretty competitive. Definitely, I made some major mistakes, especially with the committing of the Dragon Princes prematurely. Honestly, in some ways, I think you might be better off just dropping these guys, dropping the Shadow Warriors, getting doubling up on Silver Helms, maybe even quadrupling up on Silver Helms because they're cheaper. Their stats are good enough for running over Skaven. But regardless, definitely I messed up with these guys. I threw them away essentially against the War Blinding Cannon, which could have been dealt with any other means. But otherwise, pretty satisfied. As far as my opponent's builds goes, I definitely don't recommend the Poison Wind Globadiers. I don't recommend the Warlord. I think the Warlord is a terrible choice. I've been seeing him more and more often. I'm quite frankly not sure why. Like I said, I think it's an atrocious choice of Lord. He doesn't have much going for him. He's a little more mobile and a little tankier, I guess, on paper, but because he's a big target with not that great armor, he can get focused pretty hard. I just don't know. I don't think it's worth it, and I don't really think the Poison Wind Globadiers are great against High Elves. My opponent got some great value against them, against my Dragon Princes when I light cavalry when I try to reenact the charge of the Light Brigade against the cannons, but otherwise I don't really think they're worth. But otherwise, definitely not a terrible build. The Helping Abomination a little odd, but you can make it work, obviously. But yeah, good game to my opponent Helmish here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below if you've not already. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I will respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.